they've gone from DIY to DIH, which is deer in headlights, because
Yeah.
there's so many alternatives out there. How you choose the vendor you want to work with depends on how well you can articulate what you want to accomplish on whose behalf.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Deep Learning with PolyAI. Today with me, I've got Dan Miller, who is an emeritus analyst and the founder of Opus Research, a real authority in this field. Dan, it's so good to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. I think we first met in 2019 and, have stayed in touch ever since. And I've always really enjoyed your takes on the industry, its evolution, kind of like the visionary takes and the very realist one. So really excited to speak to you today.
Yeah, back in Hudson Yards, which it's coming back to life in New York. I was living there then. I'm back in San Francisco now. A lot to talk about there because what you were bringing up back then was the sort of the transition from the uh, heavily trained, almost hard-coded ways of having these agents behave like a person, a voice agent, and you were well ahead of the curve. And now I was looking at a thing on LinkedIn where Nicholas Dikoshkovsky said there are 650 firms in conversational AI, and it's a very crowded space now. And part of what we need to talk about is how companies differentiate themselves now and what brings real value to the companies that want to
Yeah. I
use
mean,
these
maybe
technologies.
just for the benefit of the audience, I'll pull it up. I saw it as well, and I was like, "This is wonderful." You know what I found particularly interesting about this one? There's conversational AI platforms. I guess this is the elite top tier. We're there. Many others are there. So many are there alone. I mean, what is it? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times what? 20 rows, 100 platforms. Then we got
Yeah,
virtual agents.
650.
So what would these be? I guess like solutions rather than, things that have self-serve. But then you reach the conversational IVR and voice agents again. So virtual versus
Yeah.
voice, that's always been a distinction that was clear to no one at all. I'm guessing these
Yeah.
are then chat versus voice. I don't know. Then my favorite is, and then we go here into like customer support automation. And it's like, well, that's kind of what all of these are for, right? And then the final nugget here is like the BDRs versus SDRs. My new VP sales, Emia, saw it, and he was like, well, I guess those that follow up on leads versus those that don't. And I'm like, do we really need to even make that distinction with AI? But yeah, it's insane.
When you think about what's different now, you see all sorts of descriptions of what you mentioned the word solution. So what comprises a complete solution? And it gets to the question on the buy side of, hey, what are you trying to solve? Are you
Yeah.
trying to create a better customer experience? Do you have specific objectives for helping employees complete a task, helping customers complete their tasks? Is there a way to do it where interacting with a voice agent is the accelerant? And it gets down to um, slow realization that this isn't about automation anymore. This is about the use of AI. Part of the solution stack is an AI. There's a flavor of AI to assist anybody with anything,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
what the benefit you get from it is strongly correlated with how much you understand of what you're trying to do already. It's not where you can just sort of say, oh, okay, an agent's going to come in and take care of this. So we're learning in the 3 years since ChatGPT made the appearance of a conversational interface for an LLM essentially, just the full spectrum from, hey, I'm going to ask it to write a paper for me to,
Yeah.
hey, I'm
Yeah.
really good at what I'm doing, and I put some thought into when and where I want to lean on one of these things
Yeah.
to make me more efficient. And that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, absolutely. And I think it's kind of like saying, what can we use electricity for? And is it like to build new appliances? Are we going to rebuild the old ones? And yeah, it's kind of like we're rebuilding the internet or mobile apps all over again. So no wonder
Yeah.
there's 650. There should be more, right? And I'm not sure that this is all conversational AI. It's really all becoming an AI landscape. And you said like a really interesting thing, and like as we were like dialing into this thing, you said that people kind of like need to learn a lot, learn to get along a bit more, right, and not compete. And I feel
Oh,
like
oh,
as
yeah.
fans, we're all just competing, and like everyone is everyone's competitor. Although in the grand scheme of things, as the TAM increases and we get to do more of these things, there's space for more than three of these 650 companies to succeed, but they'll just succeed at different things, right?
Yeah. Technology providers as solution providers to, get, and this is something I've written about for 13 years now, is about um, the API, the emergence of APIs back then. We had to describe what they were, because application program interface, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And back then we'd say, well, it isn't just that you set up like a standard way for different systems to talk to one another. You have to document what their purpose is, how you use them, what the best use cases are, and that sort of thing. And back then, everything was fragmented. There wasn't so much leaning on the cloud to be this area where you had mass storage, you had mass compute, and now you have these big LLMs and whatever potential they have to do almost anything. And we need to, well, what we were talking about before the show started is that all these solution providers, there'll be incumbents in enterprise settings,
Yeah.
and and these, you know, we try to deny this, but not everything moved to the cloud. There's still mainframes and local computing. There's a lot of intelligence on laptops, in smartphones, whatever. There's a lot of intelligence around
Yeah.
so for sure, these things have to talk to one another. And the solution providers that are trying to help, well, just gain more business, or yes, the TAM gets bigger, but you have to define what you do well on behalf of
Yeah.
specific customers, and then that means you have to work well with others. So that was, sort of stating the obvious point that I was trying to make here.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so much to do. And maybe just to kind of like go back to a few of the points that we were touching on as well. When you look at kind of like voice AI back in 2019 when we started talking, and then, all the way through, how do you feel like your expectations? Because, I was looking at your profile just briefly before we started, and, like I think I've been working on this longer than most, but and compared to the people working at it, I have,
Yeah.
but I think I see you're coming up to, near 40 years at Opus. And it's like when you see your expectations and how they've changed throughout time, like, are you disappointed? Are you surprised by how far we've come? Or like rather maybe what surprises you in a good way and what surprises you in a
Yeah.
negative way in terms of like, oh, we still haven't cracked that.
Well, I'm gratified that it was like 2 years ago. I it was almost scary, because like back in whenever I was talking about conversational commerce and conversational technologies, and just saying, hey, these are technologies that improve the conversations people to people. So that was, any almost it's at the telecom layer, the network layer, and that sort of thing. People to machine, and that's where we got into what you and I were always initially talking about, which was natural language understanding, and well, the core things around automated speech recognition, all of the components to that, and then the machine to machine stuff, that conversations that have to take place. Back then, that was just to speed up, get rid of latencies, because if what we were talking about was essentially improving the user interface, and observing that voice had a very important role in a conversational user interface, and I always thought voice would prevail, um, and that was naive because I didn't recognize the importance of SMS and texting and messaging and email all
Yeah.
becoming part of the conversation as well. So we've embraced that, whether you call it multi-channel, omni-channel, opti-channel, that's happening. And I feel like I foresaw a lot about that, but had no idea when, and spent a
Yep.
good deal of my early career just explaining how things ought to be. And then about 5 years ago, it went from the "what are you nuts, what are you talking about" to "how do I do this?" My slogan 2 years ago was, "Wow, everybody wants to be do it yourself, and this makes do it yourself possible." I mean, in now you what they were going to call it prompt engineering, but now you don't even prompt engineer. You think about what you want done, you tell your agentic AI or whatever, this is what I want, and it sort of does it for you. And so it's new enablement for do it yourselfers, but then the quality could be all over the place. And I had this slogan that said, well, they've gone from DIY to DIH, which is deer in headlights, because
Yeah.
there's so many alternatives out there. Those 650 companies that Nicholas is describing, they aren't all doing the same thing. and
Wow.
and how you choose the vendor you want to work with depends on how well you can articulate what you want to accomplish on whose behalf. And I hung around in CX, and I think it's a CX story. It was or a user. It's a UX story. So it's a user experience, and that's where I think things are improving, but it's just spotty.
It is. It is. I
Actually,
mean,
you brought up in the notes that MIT study that said
yeah.
95% of these AI projects fail
Yeah.
and or don't achieve ROI. I don't know exactly how they articulated it, but when you either do the deep dive or ask your preferred LLM to tell you do the TLDR part of it. It's not a failure in technology. It's a failure. These technologies work better than ever. And things like hallucinations will never go away. But you need to design workflows or an understanding of how you want to use these things that are the most beneficial. So where we're at is the technologies are there to help you accomplish your tasks, but rather than thinking of it as prompt engineering or saying the right prompt, you have to sort of zoom out and say, um, here's my ideal outcome.
Yeah.
Here is my speculation of what the resources I'm going to need, and then sort of monitor results and iterate and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to be the meta level manager. It's like, how do we define success? And like, if you
Yeah.
then look at the whole thing, it's like, where do you need to automate? And I think, maybe back to kind of like how you see the field evolving. Like, I think the interesting bit and kind of like how you spoke about it is like, it always bifurcated into these partisan viewpoints, and it kind of like touches on your like, let's get along a little bit. One thing that I'm disappointed by still is there almost seems to be like voice, like our world, although we now do like, I don't know if you know, like, but I think about 6 months ago, we started doing even like chat only deployments and stuff, just because, the world is large and people come to large omni-channel deployments through multiple ways. It's easier to start with chat. It's really hard to do voice well. So when people are serious, better to do voice than chat is easy. But I think what I find really interesting more broadly, ignoring poly AI, is it's almost like music, right? The like voice is like classical music. It evolves slowly. Sometimes there's composers and that's like small niche vendors like us that try to take the art form to a whole new level. And maybe, each century you get a few composers and things. And like you look at like voice mode on ChatGPT, it's phenomenal. It is very non omnichannel. It's not multimodal. And that really hurts it because, it is in the mix of the, because like I think like, it's not that people love text as much. The conversational form is about like a lack of structure, so you can do many things without discovery if you believe that it can do it. I think it's really like the GUI that is like advantageous in many situations, right? You mentioned conversational commerce, right? And the truth is if you're buying a clothing item, shoes, whatever, watches, you're looking at it and you kind of want to see them, right? So you can't really do it over voice. And I almost feel like that, classical music level obsession of voice vendors, whether they're like doing it on the phone for enterprises like we do, or like a voice mode, which could do more on um, the multimodality, but doesn't really happen because it just makes the assumption that it's going to be stuck on like a screen, because it mostly is when you're driving and talking to it, or something like that, where really, I think Meta of a few years ago when they were really trying to push it and they calmed down a little bit, but they're still working on it. You need an AR VR kind of thing to really join it all up. And until we have that, I almost feel like we're like perfecting rock and roll or classical music, and we won't get this like final, universal symphony that we need out of this.
Wow. I can see that. That's probably not a bad way of thinking of the sort of attention that's being paid to orchestration. So it went discussions of that started maybe with voice AI and did address voice agents, your classical music here, kind of morphed into uh, as it became very real, there were more questions about, oh, what's the ROI of doing this, and which led to sort of an operational or discussion of how you orchestrate the use and manage both people and
Yeah.
artificial people, and we're just at I still think we're at the early days of that, but there is much more common awareness of that. That's where the solutions have to come in. So like if you're and that was hence my, hey, these companies have to learn to work well and play well together.
Yeah.
And then for vendors of solutions to enterprises, it becomes uh, one of two discussions. It's like, oh, what is the ecosystem I'm working with here? Are we like, you know, can we, can be as peculiar as like, are we with Amazon or Microsoft, Azure, or Google Cloud? And that's where, there's some really interesting amalgams of companies that are coming together to solve, specific problems.
Yeah, yeah. And when you think about like solving the problem and back to maybe just kind of like the customer of conversational systems, do you think we're approaching the point where, and you've written about the whole like Botenfreude and kind of like, the
Mm.
glee that people feel like, haha, you see, it didn't work. I mean, like, when will that get old? When will people stop? Like, because A,
I
they
don't,
work
yeah.
better, but like, what's in the way? Why is this happening?
I think part of human nature is that people feel better. Well, when will it get better? I think it's work. The things are working, but there are implementations that are worthy of ridicule, which means that maybe it never goes away, and it's part of the vetting process for what solutions are going to survive.
Yeah.
Um, but the sine curve of this is just starting to work, and it builds high expectations, it doesn't meet those expectations, and it takes its little nosedive. um, those are becoming fewer and or less severe, and there's been a steady rise in the quality of solutions, but there's two aspects of human nature that strike me are never going to go away. Is that there are always bad actors that use the technologies in ways that are detrimental,
Yeah.
and there's a natural human tendency to want to break things that as they come along. So the first thing you hear about when a new solution comes along is, oh, I cracked that.
Yeah.
This group on Reddit, already figured that out
Yeah.
and it made it do these awful things. So I don't think that ever goes away. So we have to look at the solution set, and this goes back to the printing press, where it was the
Yeah.
Bible and it was pornography, and
Yeah.
um, so there's the dark side of these things that you, you you sort of, there'll be a whole industry around batting that down,
Yeah.
and trying to prevent fraud. Read about the deep fakes and all that, and yeah, that there's a dam for fighting the negative side, and then you just have to pay a lot of attention to the technologies that actually improve life for us humans. And there will always be a set of those that we want to nurture. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's where we're at.
Yeah, when you think of like kind of like the future in that context, when do you think we get to the point where, people really truly on average prefer speaking to AI over humans in, say, customer service scenarios?
I think it's more likely that you may not even know. I think the consensus has come, well, people kind of recognize it. So we don't have to like explicitly say, I'm your, agent, blah, 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 even though that's probably still a best practice. But I think we're there. I think that and it'll be a very individual decision. It's like you and I cannot tell a user what their preferences are. So
Yeah.
part of better listening and understanding is providing the end user with the tools explicitly or implicitly that their preferences are known. If I will have my preferred way of doing it quickly. It might not always be voice, but when it is voice, there, I just assume um, do it. I just don't. I'm indifferent to whether if an automated agent does it well, that's what I
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
If I have some qualifiers in my head that I have a particular solution. I have a particular provider that I want to talk to, and I have like a lot of ifs. Well, what is happening in healthcare right now is, um, stub your toe, don't know whether you broke it, don't want to go to urgent
Yeah.
care, you talk to ChatGPT and find out. I
Absolutely.
mean, so in a funny way, well, you saw this when OpenAI went to GPT-5 and people were going, wait, no, I worked out my deal with Ford. I talk to it all the time. That's pretty organically saying
I
I'd
was
rather.
I was maybe the boring kind of like getting absorbed by enterprise software. I was in awe of Altman for just going, you know what, I'm gonna like rid the company of that dependency and move to the next one because it's the right thing to do, because it is. You should not be choosing which model you're gonna use. It should be good enough to know, and you should subject your team and a bit of your users to enough pressure until your team cracks how to do it for them. And I was like, oh wow, they've done the right thing again. And then he like backpedaled, and I was a bit disappointed, but because it doesn't really matter if it's better or worse. What matters is to evolve to
Right.
a better one. That was clearly the better form factor decision that many in this
Yeah.
space have often shied away from and then never gotten anywhere. I was disappointed to see him backtrack, but hopefully they managed to like figure it out with like mid-level steps. But yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, it is. People get used to it. They learn how, and they're complicated tools to use. So it's really not simple
Yeah.
to just take them away. And the emotional reaction and the
Yeah.
outpours about it have been unbelievable.
Yeah. People care.
Deeply, deeply. The anthropomorphization, even though it takes every chance to tell them that it's an AI agent, it's like, doesn't matter, you're still one of my own, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, and you might remember, I used to be very militant about not saying that you're AI, and I think that was like bit juvenile, where I really, in an aspirational way, wanted to make sure that we are working towards making them good enough that you don't feel like you're talking to a clunky robot.
Yeah.
Honestly, like we've done so many experiments as they improved, and it was true before, and it's true now that they're better. It doesn't really matter, right?
Right.
Um, and whether you say it or not, it changes the reaction when they figure out it's not, or vice versa. Overall performance on behalf of the enterprise, conversion rates, satisfaction, etc., it makes much less of a difference than I feel like, our society is now such that we must always be polarized about every issue. And I feel like, there's the believers in like making it anthropomorphic and not disclosing you're not human. There are people who are like militant about like ethics and like, please, disclose it immediately and full clarity and have a robotic voice so they don't accidentally think it's human. And like we've done so much research about it, plus minus like 1% of like a
That's
contaminant or
amazing. Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah.
who cares? It's literally not relevant because people either catch on or not. They called you because your internet doesn't work, you haven't delivered something to them. And honestly, you should probably be thinking about how to fix that problem at root more than you should about how to design the failover experience, which is what a lot of customer
Yeah.
service is.
That's a really good point. So, and the failovers are less and less frequent in those highly repetitive, where's my package? When's the guy coming? I mean,
Wherever we've got a good environment now, we're well over 90% success rates, right? So,
yeah,
and that wasn't easy. That was like in the days of like the early solutions for this. I think getting to that was an absolute masterpiece of those old timers. And it took like customers that really had to be bent and forced to stay in the interaction to learn how to use it well enough to get to that
yeah,
performance. Maybe like
yeah.
for the final bit, when you look at these kind of like AI deployments and everything that you've seen over your career, what do you think is the most kind of like underestimated variable in that AI deployment? Is it like the performance of technology? Is it the data pipeline, the governance, the
Mhm.
collaboration between vendors and enterprises, or something else that I'm not thinking of? And has it
Or
changed over
lack
time?
thereof. So the fact that these LLMs can do all these things so well and fail unpredictably is shouldn't dissuade people from figuring out for themselves how to best use them. And the designers of solutions from giving those end users the power to use them. My
Yeah,
son's a college professor, and this comes up in education a lot. Given that um, you can't put the genie back in the bottle or whatever it is. People are using some form of conversational LLM to help them with their schoolwork. And we have a decision to make. Do you set up mechanisms to detect that when it's being used for writing, and there are there's ways to do that, or do you just say, hey, I don't care how you use it, know
yeah,
as a person that you're not learning anything if you say, oh, here's my assignment, write a 500 word essay about blah blah blah, and it does it
yeah,
for you. I
yeah.
mean, um, that we're we're gonna we're gonna it's our responsibility to define how to best use this on our own behalf. And that's it's a variant of what was going on when you and I first talked, and there were developers of pretty highly scripted spoken interactions, and then there were a community of solution providers that just said, oh, you can do this with a pull down menu and click on things,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
nobody and you didn't even care what was going on. Did you write a script? What was going on at the telephony layers? We sort of took for granted that, hey, this the phone system works and stuff like that. So I think there's going to be a return to understanding all the 5 layers of the ISO solution
yeah.
stack,
Oh
because
yeah.
things are going to fail in ways that you don't understand unless you sort of know what the root cause was,
I
and
I, I
it'll be
love Yeah, in every conversation with you, you reach like a topic that, I've Sean, my co-founder, has gotten me to not go to like the 5 or 6 layer stack in every conversation. I'm like, but it's only really the only one there is, because you just need to map it differently to human, computer, computer, because it's just uncertainty and different levels of failures, right?
Right. So, 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 um, so there'll be equal. Well, you talked about, how preoccupied we used to
Yep.
be for the failovers. And like, I don't know what percentage of solutions that were written were, oh, when this fails, you do
Yeah.
this. Um,
Yeah.
and I think the pendulum will swing more to, hey, we we want to define success. And this
Yeah.
has a lot of, and we're getting better at that. And people are realizing if they're going to get an ROI, and that was the message in this MIT study, is that a lot of it has to do with understanding all the workflows that have people and machines, the way you just articulated that, and it becomes the technologies are failing less and less. It's how we use them and how we design sort of the back and forth, and so the attention has to go towards um, defining success, and
Yeah.
some of that can be and its impact on ROI, and then sort of detecting where failure happened and sort of addressing that almost on a case by case basis. And I don't think we're there quite yet, but we'll see.
Awesome. Well, Dan, look, I mean, always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah,
Thank you for being on our podcast. I think you've
yeah.
been like chronicling and shaping this industry for decades, and it's always kind of grounding to hear your point of view. I hope we manage to live up to that expectation slowly,
Yeah.
and to
You
do
guys
it
have been
better.
great.
How long
Yeah.
do you how long do you think before like, you know, with the current rate of technology before it lives up to your expectations? Do you think it's soon, or do you think it's
Oh no,
completely impossible to say?
that's a never. I used to think, oh, there's this rolling 5 years. The perfection, getting there is like 5 years away, but it's like a rolling 5 years.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think that the pace of technology refresh has gotten so short that maybe it's not 5 years. It's like a rolling 3 years or 2 years now. And
yeah,
the stuff that we're visualizing and saying, oh, this is perfection. We're all
yeah,
living in harmony, these machines understand not just what I'm saying, but what I mean to say, and then fulfilling on its understanding of what I mean to say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll be
Either
here.
never.
Yeah, we'll be here in 5 years saying, "Oh my God, it hasn't read my mind again," and it just goes to
Exactly.
yeah, perfect.
All right.
Well, Dan, thank you
Well,
so much for joining us and
thank
for being
you.
a guest on the podcast. To everyone watching, please, like, share, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.